Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Growth Capital Podcast. I'm your host, Justin Dixon. And today I've got a special guest, Rekha Shenoy. She is the CEO of Backbox. They are a network cyber resilience platform. I got the chance to know Rekha 2 years ago as I was helping a private equity firm search for a new CEO. And she was the person that came up and I found, and we've built a relationship over the last few years. And she's been the CEO at Backbox for just over a year now. So we dive deep into her story about how she came to this role, what experience she had prior to Backbox that made this transition into being the CEO so seamless, and also some of the things that she's identified within the business that has allowed her to pivot the business and has brought them to great success. So really cool episode to get to really talk to Rekha a bit more. So let's get Rekha on the pod. Interested in hearing conversations with private equity leaders, CEOs of private equity-backed companies, and startup entrepreneurs where they share their stories about their career journeys, starting, investing in, and scaling successful businesses, and the important role that having the right talent plays in building a successful business, then you are in the right place. Welcome back to another episode of the Growth Capital Podcast. Here's your host, Justin Dixon. All right, Rekha, thank you for being a guest on the podcast. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too, Justin. Good to see you after it's been a bit of time. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Well, let's kind of jump into it. Obviously, you and I know each other quite well over the last couple of years, but maybe for the folks that are listening or watching this that don't know, maybe share a little bit about kind of who you are, where you are, and what you're up to right now.
Sure. I am CEO of Backbox, which is a network cyber resilience platform. Have been running it for the last year and really seen some really great transformation. But prior to that, I have over 25 years of experience in enterprise software and cybersecurity specifically, having run everything from engineering, products, go-to-market, revenue, marketing, and also on the buy and sell side of this industry. So having done all of that, it's exciting times to be able to lead a real jewel of a company that Backbox is today.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to unpack kind of about your background, but I guess, I always like to hear people's origin stories of how they kind of get to being a CEO, because these jobs are typically not posted on LinkedIn or whatever. You kind of have to be tapped, or whether that's tapped internally or externally. So before we get into kind of your core background before Backbox, like what was your path to kind of getting into the CEO role?
I would say I got lucky in a lot of situations. So having a very technical background, I learned very quickly I did not want to be an engineer, So for those who know the traditional Indian culture, you need to be an engineer or a doctor. And the only reason I was an engineer was because I didn't want to be a doctor. But then learned very quickly I love technology, just not the engineering part of it. And that served me well, to be honest, starting out on the engineering side. But having done that, I started out my career in product management. And that was incredible, working on some pretty massive transformational integrations and things of that nature. I also got lucky being on the buy and sell side of corporate development in large public companies, in private equity-led companies, in VC-led companies, and so on, and to deeply understand what it takes to create value. And a lot of people just use those words and don't appreciate what that means. It starts obviously with really great product market fit. So the product management beginning was amazing. But I've seen plenty of great ideas sit on the shelf and really not hit the market. And so that understanding what it takes to, take a great idea, put it in market and compete and differentiate, got really great front row seats to learning that on the marketing side, on the revenue side, and all of that. But then the cool thing is learning how to put two pieces together and make them successful. 1 + 1 = 3 and all of that, and seen enough failures to know what not to do on that side. So I spent over 10 years at BMC Software, where I had my first foray into it. And then while I was there, I found an opportunity at Tripwire, which was just very early days, VC led. Cybersecurity software with sort of a technology, but didn't really know what market it was in. And jumping in and driving strategy there is where everything took off. We went from, almost no revenue to, by the time I had left, it was over almost 200 million in revenue. But all of that on the backs of incredible transformation, both on the product side, but go-to-market side, really. And some of that was really in the PE world. And this was early days of PE, where the idea was PE was where you go to become a cash cow. And it was nothing like that. I thought Tomo Bravo had an incredible value creation ability, and I learned a ton from that. What that did was it made an incredibly well-run business that became valuable for its operations, both from revenue and EBITDA. And what we were able to do with our profitability was really drive our own destiny and acquire really cool technologies. So having had all of those experiences, I led the sale of the company to a public company. And at that point, I was like, okay, I've done products, I've done marketing, I've done revenue, I've done corp dev. I have a feeling I got to go find something to do. But Belden, which is the company that bought Tripwire, gave me an opportunity to run a business, a truly independent business as a general manager. And that's where the CEO opportunities came in. Having done that, I spent the next 5 years really supporting a lot of different PE run businesses and trying to find the next thing until you found me, Justin. Everyone, I would imagine, especially on the executive side, get a lot of inbound calls. And many of us are skeptical because having been through several PE scenarios, I had a long list of questions of, what makes this real? Because there's a lot of talk and not a lot of real action. You were pretty special in the sense of the realism you brought to the picture. This is what we care about, this is what we don't care about, and this is why. And then from there, the conversations with the Elsewhere partners were also incredibly real. There was a meeting of the minds of experience that was very similar to mine. And what that does is it really creates sort of an environment where you can, what I call shorthand, you can get to the point very quickly. So you're not using words that are tripping over each other. You're not, bumping on surface level conversations. You go deep very fast. And so I found that there were people that were very much my people there. And you made that partnership really, really seamless. So at Elsewhere, I spent about a year really going to market with them in terms of trying to find an acquisition that, fit my profile, but also had, the opportunity for me to put my fingerprints all over what that growth strategy was going to be for that business. And we were pretty close to closing on one when, I had this opportunity fall on my lap, and it took a minute to realize that this was the jewel. But once we did, April of last year, I took over this business, and it has been, you see a lot from the outside and you think, there must be some hair on this. There must be some messy stuff on the inside and all of that. And it's been surprising how much of a real jewel this technology is, especially, I can say this often, you see technologies, you see CEOs, and it's the job of the CEO to kind of blow it up and make it look big. And you expect about 60% of that to be true. I happen to have the exact opposite, where I don't think I'm blowing it up enough. The product is actually ahead of what we're doing in go-to-market. And so to build out go-to-market, is relative to technology problems, a lot easier problem to have. And couldn't be more proud of the team, the customers that are rabid fans of it, and the go-to-market efforts we're in the middle of. So that's been a incredibly fun journey along the way, and in this case particularly, Justin, thank you for helping me get here.
Well, you're quite welcome. It was an awesome opportunity to work with Elsewhere, and it was a very interesting kind of search that I was doing for them because it wasn't really a we have a job opening at a specific company. It was really we're looking for this type of a person in these type of industries in this size of company. Go find it. And so it was awesome to kind of get to know you over the last couple of years, and it was a long journey to get you from our first conversation to actually getting you into a business. And I think the outcome was not exactly what we anticipated because we thought we would put you into a new acquisition versus a existing portfolio company. But it sounds like it's worked out because now you've been there just about a year or just over a year, I think, right?
A little over a year, yeah.
Yeah. So it's been a cool ride to kind of see the fruits of the labor from both of us to kind of get you into the role. So I guess as you were learning about Elsewhere through that year of kind of doing some helping them look through different acquisition targets and things like that, obviously you got to know all of the players within kind of the Elsewhere ecosystem. And then you got introduced to this role at Backbox when you were going into a CEO role, because even though you've led a business unit and kind of acted as a business unit CEO, you still weren't the chief, right? You had other bosses and all that stuff that kind of bubbled up to the parent. How is the transition to being the head of Backbox and being the person that needs to make all the decisions, rightly or wrongly, but you need to be the one that does that? Has there been any kind of like, oh wow, I wish I would have known this before I started, or has the journey to in your first year been as smooth or as awesome as you anticipated it being?
To be honest, it was way too long coming.
Okay.
I think I would say the partnership with Elsewhere is the only new part, and it's been good. So having sat in every C-level role reporting into the CEO probably was a bit intimidating for my team. So when I came on board, it was, hey, let me tell you about the business, and which obviously I was very interested in. There was a lot to learn and all of that. But I think the team sort of were not realizing how I could dive in deep on any of these roles simply because I had been there. But then I had to make them comfortable with that. So that side was sort of, okay, I get it, and also to beginning to realize that it's not my job to do those jobs and to enable them. So that was sort of both good and a little bit of an adjustment. But then on the other side, with the board, we've had, I would say, no shortage of challenges to work with, but the level of trust and respect with the team really makes all of that easy. They're tough conversations. They're, difficult things in a transition and so on. But it becomes easy to have a conversation with someone who has a ton of experience. So in my case, Rita Salvaggi is our chairman of the board, had just, ended her CEO gig a couple of years before, but as a long history in sort of the same space as me. And so when we dive into it, there's always another nugget there where she says, well, think about this. And a lot of times it's like, that seems odd. Why would I think about that? And then you sit with it and you go like, oh, thank goodness, so she's finding me blind spots all the time. On the investor side with Chris Basidi and Sloan Child, who are our other board members, it's interesting to understand what a business of this size looks like next in the transformation. Like, what does value creation look like, and so on. Having done it for larger businesses, it's a different thing around scale and size. But again, so much learning and so much value there as well. So when I think about the last year and say, okay, what did I not know or not expect? I would say it's a lot of on the investor side for a business of this size. And just learning. I don't know that there was a faster way to learn it, but it's been good learning on that side. But operationally, I expect more challenges in front of us for sure, but the ones that were behind us, I think we repositioned the company,
Okay.
and that was a huge deal. We really had enterprise customers from the very beginning, and we were targeting SMB, and that was a misstep that we were able to correct fairly quickly. But now it's really about operational efficiency and really getting good at that. That I feel like isn't a quick fix. It's a long journey, and great partnership with the team, with the leadership, with the elsewhere team to kind of go build that.
So when you came in, you said that you shifted from focusing on SMB to focusing on enterprise. Is that what you said? So how did you identify that, and how did you then, I guess, reposition the business to kind of maybe not shut out the SMB, or did you kind of just like pivot and say thanks, but we're going to go upstream, or what was that process like?
So the interesting thing about this is that I'm extremely data driven. So the challenge wasn't, I had a good team that was able to pull it for me, let me put it that way. But the questions to be asked were where all of the nuggets lay. The team was struggling with, the anecdotal data I was getting was this is a commoditized product. We can't sell it. And by the way, the scary part was it was competing against a SMB product that was giving it away for free. So not only were we SMB, we were going down market and competing against free in what looked commoditized. But when you look at the data and you look at what the original founders were selling it for that period of time, including what was in the pipeline, it was not SMB customers, it was enterprise customers. And so I kind of said, listen, if you look at the last 5 quarters, we had 5 different Hail Mary situations where one large enterprise customer would have closed it, and they were real deals. They just didn't close. So that was one. The other one was leaning in on my product skills. You just click around on the product and we go like, why does it have this feature? Why does it have this feature? Why does it have this feature? So we were selling, I want to say, about 20% of the product in this commoditized fashion, and understanding that this, complexity and this maturity of this product really represented more of an enterprise need. But the data is interesting. Really, where you find the real gold is when you go out there and you talk to customers. And in spending time with customers, I can tell you, I've not seen the kind of rabid fans this company has. Okay. Customers get excited. They talk about it in a way that don't look like basic backup and recovery. In fact, they didn't even mention that. We were solving mission critical problems for large healthcare, for large telcos, those kinds of things. And you go like, that's not the same as an SMB product. Right. And often I would describe this just to make a point, which is, hey, a dentist shop doesn't have this problem. What are you trying to solve here in SMB? I know there's a much more complexity in SMB, but when you make it that way, you go like, they don't have these problems that this product solves. It becomes easier to understand what a large enterprise might actually want. And when I say large enterprise, I mean 5,000 employees and above, which is thousands of enterprises. It's not just Apple and NVIDIA, right? And so once we figured that out, we started digging in. We absolutely spent a lot of time repositioning the business. We spent a lot of time with analysts like Gartner and others to say, is this real? And having done that for 25 years, I've been in places where I'm pitching them on what it is, and they do this. Okay. Or even worse, if you squint and you look at it this way, I can kind of vaguely see what you're talking about, right? Because they're being nice, and this just doesn't, you can see that you're really pushing a rock uphill. It wasn't that at all. They were like, yeah, I've talked to your customer. That's exactly what it is. Why have you guys been doing this other thing? So the resonance we got on our new messaging was shocking. It was like, wow. So now it's upon us to go get the new message out and get the new story out and really push it. And that's where I could talk about, like, we are confident we have the right message. Now, how do we scale it?
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned kind of going out and visiting customers. It seems like, and I don't have a ton of data to back this up, but another client that I work with, he was put into a CRO role, and he spent the first few months going out and visiting customers, both current and also kind of meeting people at conferences. And he generated so much business that from current customers that were just like, yeah, nobody's talked to us really or visited us in well over a year. And it's like, it's just nice to get back into a face-to-face environment. I guess I'm curious, kind of, are you starting to think that maybe kind of now that we're, 4 or 5 years away from COVID. People are starting to like be comfortable. The return to work stuff is kind of becoming more real. And it feels like people are wanting to get back and doing face-to-face meetings or going to conferences and things like that. Do you think you're getting more data, maybe qualitative data from your customers when you go visit them in person versus having a Zoom or, just a phone call?
But I think the quality of Zoom meetings has gotten better. So I think, yes, there's no competition to in person, but I would not deny how much value we get out of Zoom calls as well. And here's the reason why sometimes that's pretty much all you have. Yeah. I still see a lot of customers where they're all remote. So, okay. I can't go visit them in their homes anyways. So that wasn't a choice. Or they're remote and their teams are disparate. So if I want to talk to, the leadership, and there's three VPs in a large company, they're going to be in 3 locations. But that said, the fundamental principles around being curious and listening to customers is something you just can't lose. In person works out even better, of course. But what I mean by that is, I've said this for years, is that you go to a customer with a list of questions you think you want to have answered. Like, why is this way? What is your critical business problem? Something of that nature. And the customer always answers the question you should have had on your list and you didn't. And if you have those kinds of aha moments, you can have them on Zoom, you can have them in person. That's when you suddenly realize, hey, I'm better understanding this market. It's actually explaining a different problem I have in my business. And there was this gap in my understanding. And so every time I have one of those aha moments, where it's a question I didn't even have on my list, it's incredibly transformational in terms of what it does for the business. And so you can have those on Zoom, but the key here for me is, don't spend your time pitching. That's the mistake that people do. Ask open-ended questions that really, when the customer appreciates that you actually want to understand their business, they don't stop talking. Yeah. and that's when the nuggets come out. So you could do those both ways. Obviously, in person is better. But I think most companies and most people have gotten better at managing Zoom, so it's not, so formal.
Yeah, it seems like Zooms are getting, sometimes when you get on a Zoom call, you just know it's like, I'm on a sales call. People are I'm just going to get pitched. That's what I'm here for. I scheduled it, on their Calendly link or whatever. And sometimes you let your guard down if you're at a dinner or even in an office or whatever. I guess as you think about,
just like you and I, Justin, we've talked to each other countless times, but it's been on Zoom. Yeah. I always joke that I met you once, I think, so far. That's in right. person. And I always joke, when I meet people that I know really well, I feel like I know them really well. And I meet in person. The only thing I don't know is how tall you are.
Exactly right. Yeah, I've met people that I think are super tall and they're short, and vice versa. Just because you never know, because you only see them, from sometimes the neck up. It is funny, and yeah, we've gotten to know each other quite well the last few years, and yeah, I think we've only met once when you were here for one of the AGMs last year, I think it was. So it's always great to meet people in person, because a lot of times in my world in recruitment, I don't get a chance to meet them in person. It's just really either phone or and I don't even get to see them, or it's Zoom. So it always is good to put a face and an actual in-person face to the name. Now that you've been in the CEO role for a year, what does the next kind of year look like? What do you think are some of the challenges? I mean, there's a ton of stuff going on. We're recording this in kind of mid-late May 2025. So, we've got tariff conversations. There's still wars going on. Like, what do you think are some of the headwinds that, even though you're in this kind of pivoting, going to more of an enterprise sales motion, which is a longer and different sales motion than an SMB. But like, what is the next kind of 12 months kind of look like for Backbox?
I think it's a combination of headwind and tailwind, which is AI.
Yeah.
So it's I don't see a real impact from tariffs for our side of the business. We think the opportunity is AI, and how quickly can we take advantage of the opportunity. So being sort of core to the network infrastructure that runs everything, every business and so on, AI is going to put a stress on that network infrastructure. And what that network infrastructure looks like today is dramatically different from 3 to 5 years ago. So it includes a cloud, multiple clouds, hybrid private clouds. It includes work from home. It includes going back into the office. All of that is network infrastructure. And the pace at which AI is used to hack into these networks is expanding. So things that could have been exploited in weeks or months is now being exploited in days or hours. And so the needs of the network are changing. And just as much as the hackers are taking advantage of AI to, to really hack into systems, the good guys, the vendors, have an opportunity to leverage AI to actually solve the problem. And so where I see an opportunity is, I always say that cybersecurity, there's a bunch of monitoring tools. That world has been around for 30 years and continues to have another, cool detection tool. But the gap in cybersecurity is still manual labor. Anything that humans need to do one more time to solve this problem leaves the enterprises in jeopardy. And so what can we do to take that human labor, challenge away and actually deliver real value so that they can keep up with the pace at which these networks need to stay resilient to both modern day, activity and all of that, and keep the outages away and keep them up and running, but recover faster from the pace at which they're being, either the changes are affecting them or the hacks are affecting them, and all of those things. So that world has a ton of opportunity to deploy trusted AI. And that's the gap that I feel like is there. Why don't humans use it more? Because we don't need AI hallucinations. We don't need new problems that we create. What we need is AI that when it does that thing, it's trusted, and that's an opportunity. So I think the race is on that side, and there's a lot of really good ideas in market in terms of how we can better enable customers to do more with less, and that's our opportunity.
So you guys are embedding some type of AI into the Backbox product currently from an automation standpoint for these network operators, so they can automate things that were done by a human, where inherently there's some error potential for that. Is that kind of how, in a very simple terms, obviously there's more technical to it, but is that part of how it's implemented in the product?
Yes. And I think we believe a couple of things. One is we know the network infrastructure better than anybody else. So, that's key. And our customers will agree to that. We have automations out of the box for over 180 different network vendors. So we really deeply understand it. But when we say we automate it, we don't do that thing that just goes bump in the night and something doesn't work. That's what's scary about automation. And that's not what we do. What we believe is that sometimes the gap between using cool, sci-fi automation and good stuff is that we make it hard on customers. So we believe in the easy button. And so when we make things easy, trusted, we actually change the market. And that's where the opportunity is with AI. Let our network engineers be network engineers and not be, rocket scientists. You don't have to learn Python. You don't have to learn any of those things. So we allow you to be you. How quickly can I take what you just did and turn it into automation? That's our opportunity. And that's where AI can come in. Leverage your expertise where you are. Don't make you an expert, but then give you this trusted solution that did exactly what you wanted. And if it works the way you want it, it's tested and proven. We can deploy it broadly and just massively change the game.
Yeah. How are you guys leveraging AI internally? Whether it's you personally kind of leveraging it as a thought partner, I'm talking to a lot of people, and obviously inherently, no matter what we're talking about, AI gets brought up at some point, whether they're using it in their product, like you just mentioned, or they're leveraging it internally as a thought partner, or, obviously you can use it to write a better email if you want to, but, how are you guys deploying it kind of from an internal perspective?
Yeah, we are spending a lot of time on this. In fact, there's not a department at Backbox that isn't thinking about how to leverage AI. We look at it as, obviously we've made sure that step one is making sure it's secure. So we're not
Yep.
losing IP by, having our developers write with AI and then all of a sudden our IP is open source. So,
Right.
we have those basics. Every engineer is using AI in some fashion and we've got room for improvement there and all of that. So it certainly had an immediate impact over the years. I would say immediate is a bit of a term. We've been using it for at least a couple of years, where we're seeing the ability to do more with less. Where we are going next is obviously we're using a lot of AI in the go-to-market and customer success spaces. We believe that AI is changing monthly. So,
Yeah.
if we have an understanding of it from a year ago, we're behind. So keeping up with it. But then we're not just saying, hey, here's cool technology, let's go play with it. We could do that all day long. It's actually solving real problems we have today. So when we talk about scaling our go-to-market and all of that, it's in that space. We have customers that we hadn't talked to before, and we are now all over. We have a team now; they're leveraging AI, understanding churn risk, understanding how we can, better support our customers, understanding how we can write better marketing messages, how we can leverage it in BDR. It's across the board. We are, really exploring. Oh, we're even looking at AI for financial analysis. How can we produce better reports and so on? So I think today there's always a do-it-yourself AI, which is the obvious, like ask it a question and see if it can give me an interesting answer. That's fairly basic, but the area that is closer to us is, the packaged AI that are now available across all of these vendors. Which of these actually solves a real problem and saves us money and time?
Yeah. I guess if we jumped on a podcast a year from today, what do you think you would want to have happen within Backbox that would make our conversation like, man, we crushed it this year, and all this success? Like, what are some of the two, three things that are like on your Trello board, if you will, of like, here's what we're doing in the next 12 months?
For me, it's predictability.
Okay.
We have had incredible growth in the last year, but it's been bumpy, right? We learned a lot. We put it into the thing and into the operations, and then it did another thing and it did another thing, and it's been like that. But how do we get predictable? And so to me, predictability is the next big wave of, value creation, to be honest, for us, and then building a path to profitability for this business. We're not far from either of those. But, we didn't get here with a very clear vision of where we would be in a year. I think we're a little ahead of where I thought we would be. But I expect the next road to be bumpier than the last 12 months, and getting to a path to predictability will be very cool.
Awesome. Well, last kind of question here before we wrap up. I guess now that you've had all these roles, you've done most, if not all, of the C-suite roles that roll up into a CEO. Now you are CEO. I think I'm just kind of curious, did any one of those roles, do you think somebody in a CPO role or a CMO role or a CRO role in a B2B SaaS kind of in your type of a business, do you think any one of those has a better path or an easier path to becoming a CEO than the other, or is it really down to the person and the opportunity? Like, what's your kind of thoughts? Because you've been in most, if not all, of those.
That's a good question. I would say it depends on what that business is. So, the most important thing is usually CEO roles come in when a CEO needs to be changed, there's a real problem. So you don't get these, steady as she goes, go ahead and be a CEO kind of a role. Right. So then the question becomes, what is that problem? And are you a fit for that? So if this is a CEO role where there's a real technology, issue, then maybe your CTO skills make you a really good fit for this. If the issue is go to market, and then maybe your go to market experience is a fit for this. But across the board, I would say, a gap for most people in any of those roles is strong financial grounding. So, you can't deny that no matter which role you take the time to deeply understand your business's P&L. That will serve you well across the board. But why I say it that way is, a core thing is always hire people smarter than you. And so if your strength is a CTO, make sure that you have the most reliable person on the go-to-market side that can, augment your strengths, and be strong on the other side, and you build that. If you're not strong in, let's say, financial analysis, make sure you have a really strong CFO who can kind of start guiding you in that direction. But expect to learn all the way through, and ideally you've had that experience. But if you're a strong CTO and the product and this company's problem is go to market, then maybe that's not the one that you want to chase down, because there's going to be plenty of opportunities where your skills are going to be critical.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I think when we were looking at, and I've talked to dozens and dozens of folks that are wanting to be a CEO, I think the biggest gap or the biggest advantage that you had was you've done almost all the roles, if not all the roles that report up, but also you owned a P&L. And I think that was one of the biggest gaps once we got people kind of further down the road in the kind of vetting process, was just while they were aware of the financial side and how to maybe manage an ad spend budget or whatever, they didn't really get the full P&L kind of picture. So yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. All right, last kind of three questions that I ask every guest. So obviously I gave you some prep for this, but I guess first question is maybe provide like an influential book or a podcast that you would recommend.
Yeah, so the one that came up for me is a very simple book that I read about, I want to say almost 20 years ago now, that I still leverage, especially in this situation, is The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Pat Lencioni. It's the easiest read. You could probably finish it in a couple of days. It's written like a novel, but you will, for anyone in the C-suite, you will find yourself thinking about what the problem is, the 5 dysfunctions on the team at all times. And I pitch it all the time to my team, and I look for opportunities to create healthy conflict and really focus on the customer and focus on results. And those are sort of some of those key things that the simplicity of the book just makes it a real useful product, useful thing to read and reference a lot. So whenever I get asked that question, that's the first book that comes to mind.
Awesome. No, I like it. I've had that recommended before, but I haven't read it yet, so I'll have to check that out. All right, favorite thing to do outside of work?
Travel. I have this weird, I call it the map head. So there's a lot of engineers who I resonate with who love puzzles. And so for me, I love puzzles, doing puzzles and all of that. But then I use that same puzzle brain to read maps. So I have this weird idea of, like, when I go to big cities, especially in Europe and other places, I try to memorize a portion of the map as much as I can and then walk around like a local.
Interesting. Got it. Have you been to Bruges? Because Bruges has a lot of little streets. Like I've been there and had the map and got lost and all that stuff. So that would be interesting to try to memorize that map, even part of it. Yeah, fascinating.
Yeah, you can find the house with the window that has the dog sitting there, and I'm like, how after all these years is that dog still sitting there?
Right. Awesome. Well, last question here, and this maybe kind of dovetails into your travel piece, but maybe your favorite vacation spot.
There's a lot. This one would be hard. So I'll just kind of riff on the map head piece, which is I have loved exploring different parts of London like a local, and I have not run out of neighborhoods to go explore. So still love my favorite spots in London and all those local things to do, and I have not run out of that. So I would say easy answer. It doesn't feel like a vacation because I go there so often and all of that, but it's still a city that has more and more to offer every time I go.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm a London fan. I haven't been there enough, but we'll have to trade notes, and you can give me some local stuff to do. But Rekha, this has been awesome. I really appreciate your time, and it's been awesome to get to know you. And yeah, I love doing these podcasts with people that I've known before because I get to learn more and more about people more than what you just do kind of in a regular conversation. So if people want to learn more about you, your story, what you're doing there at Backbox, like what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, LinkedIn. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd be very interested in continuing a conversation if this was interesting.
Awesome. Rekha, thank you very much. It's been awesome. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
I hope you found at least one actionable insight from this episode of the Growth Capital Podcast, your one-stop shop for insights from private equity leaders, CEOs, and startup entrepreneurs on starting, investing in, and scaling successful businesses, as well as the role having the right talent plays in growing a successful business. It would be greatly appreciated if you would rate and review this podcast. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe and drop us a comment so we can expand the audience of this podcast. Thank you for all your support, and don't forget about upcoming episodes dropping every Tuesday.